Hello and welcome to Mark My Words. This is Mark Homer. I've got Simon Zutshi with me here today, an illustrious colleague within the same industry. Simon has a few businesses and has written a great book, Property Magic, and obviously he's got PIN, which is a training business. Not completely dissimilar to Progressive, although I'll let him sort of explain in a bit more detail exactly how how it all fits together and what he does. But Simon, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. First time in your offices, first time in Peterborough as well. And I'd like to introduce Mark Homer to people listening to my podcast. So Mark is the co-founder of Progressive Property. He's the real kind of the property part of the Progressive Property Partnership. Bought and sold over 500 properties or something crazy like that. You've done a lot more property than me, I think. I focus more on the training side, which is what I love, and you've got stuck into the property, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, we had back in the early days, we had a sort of portfolio building product, which, obviously got a good rump of the properties bought. But that was always what I did right from before we started this company. I was buying little terraced houses and refurbing them and remortgaging them. And then from there, I started doing little sort of conversions and then I started doing sort of putting HMOs in cluster flats and doing bigger buildings, and now I'm sort of doing much bigger blocks. Once they're done, I usually refinance them and put them in our letting agency.
Exactly, nice end-to-end business.
Yeah, so that vertical integration, I
absolutely,
like that. Yeah.
We've done that a little bit with obviously teaching people how to go and find great property deals, and then helping them fund them through my other business, Crowd Property.
So tell us about that. How does Crowd Property work? Because although I think I've raised money through crowd finance, I think a couple of times over the years, I haven't been a big sort of, I haven't done loads with it. I quite like banks.
I think it's still, I'm not with you on that one, I'm afraid. Right. But I think it's quite interesting because peer-to-peer lending and crowdfunding is still relatively new. I think most people in the UK might have heard of it, but haven't done it. So it's kind of, and the UK is actually the pioneer of it. So about 6 years ago, I was at a business event. I'm always investing in myself, always trying to learn more and get around like-minded people. And I was at an event which is a kind of a futurist event, looking at future trends and things. And they were talking about this peer-to-peer lending and crowdfunding. And I thought, I didn't really know what it was. And they explained that people bring projects, and it might be for a business or to raise money for a record or a new product, whatever it is, and the crowd come and fund it. And at the time, I was doing not quite the size deals you're doing, Mark, but I was converting care homes up north into like 20, 25 flats and things. And I was generally using my money and other people's money, which is one of the things we teach people how to do. And I was doing that because I realized, I believe that traditional banks who traditionally would fund developments, the last couple of years, they're not so keen to do it. And they really want to make you jump through hoops, even if you've got quite good experience and track record as we have. And I thought there's got to be an easier way. So I was mainly funding things through private money. And I realized that, lots of people might want to lend me 50, 100 grand to do my projects. A lot of people in my database didn't have that kind of money, but would love to get a better return on their investment. So I thought, could I solve two problems at the same time? Could I help developers who are struggling to get the debt part of their deals, and then also help a normal consumer get a much better return on their money? And all that activity is regulated by the FCA. So we put together a peer-to-peer lending platform.
Interesting.
And obviously we've got lots of people who've done our training and your training who are finding great deals. And then we help fund those deals very, very quickly. And actually we are, no matter how we're funding, we happen to be funding from the crowd. We've also got a couple of institutions who put money in as well. And it's a way of cutting out the bank, cutting out the middleman.
So this is more of, this is effectively development finance.
It is development finance, so you've got to be adding value. Short term, it's kind of similar to bridging, but much quicker. And the thing is, it's fast, reliable finance.
Okay, so it's much quicker than bridging.
Much quicker than bridging.
Why is that?
Because what we do is, so people will come to us and they'll say, right, I've got this great project. And in 5 minutes, they can fill in a form, literally 12 boxes. And within usually 24 hours, we can say, yes, we can fund it or not. So a very quick decision. And now obviously we do a huge amount of due diligence to make sure we don't lend on any bad deals. It's got to be a good deal. But the initial decisions are very quick. And then depending on if how organised the borrower is.
Yeah.
We always get a RICS valuation, a before and after.
Yeah.
And that's often the slowest thing.
Yeah.
We can put something on the platform. We promote it out to all of our lenders.
Yeah.
Typically, things are funding in minutes.
Yeah.
We're talking several £100,000 loans. I think about £300,000-400,000 is the average.
Yeah.
We do anything from 100 up to a couple of million.
Yeah.
And so it's just really fast, reliable.
Interesting. And then you guys take first charge on the...
Yeah, so like any lender, we'll take a first charge security.
Yeah.
Typically, we'll end up to about 70%.
Okay.
However, because we are property professionals, we would lend maybe more than a bridging company or a bank if it's a good deal. So we've had one of my clients, he found a large house that he wanted to redevelop. He secured an option on it for 1.4 million.
Okay.
He's got planning permission on it. And so the land with planning is worth 2 million. So he's going to buy it using crowd property, and we're going to lend him pretty much the full purchase price.
Okay, because you know there's so much equity.
Because we understand it and we get it, whereas a normal bank might lend a bit more, but they're all nervous.
Yeah,
and
usually. What are the costs? You know, what does it cost to borrow money from you?
So it ranges from about 2 to 4%, depending on the size of the loan. That's the arrangement fee.
Yeah.
And then the fees vary depending on the loan to value from about 0.63 up to about 0.88 per month.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
So no penalties, no hidden fees.
Yeah, which is normal with bridging. I mean, I can't remember the last. You know, I don't take bridging out very often, but every now and again I need to buy something quick.
Yeah.
So I have used bridging.
Yeah.
And I'm often drawn in at 0.6, 0.7.
Yeah.
But honestly, when I get to the end of it, if I take an annualized, you know, an IRR, what is it they have charged with all the fees and all the, you know, the arrangement fees and the exit fees and the extra they're taking out the solicitor and the commissions.
Yeah, that's right.
I think they're always at about 15%.
Yeah, and more.
Yeah.
And more. And the thing is, it's the hidden fees that
I've never got out of one with less than 15. Them having less than 15%. Yeah. On an annual basis.
You should come to Crowd Property.
Yeah.
Give it a try.
That's that was the direction I was heading.
You should probably give it a try. Yeah, I'm sure we'd do a favourable rate for you, mates rates. You know.
Yeah. Well, it sounds more like 10%, doesn't it? That if
it's close to that. 10 to 12.
Yeah.
10 to 12.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is we have it. I mean, I think a mistake that many investors make, they're just looking at the cost.
Yeah.
And actually, they're not factoring in their time cost.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're providing a great solution for people to quickly get their finance.
Yeah.
So spend less time thinking about that, spend more time actually on the deal.
Yeah.
And that's finding deals and doing the deals where you're going to get the most money, right?
Yeah.
So actually it's all in proportion, I think.
Yeah, of course it is. Okay, well that's interesting, very interesting. So in terms of, you know, you've obviously bought stuff, is it mainly around Birmingham?
Well, I started in Birmingham where I live, but actually, as we all did in the good old no money down days, I was buying everywhere, which probably wasn't the best thing. You know, I've got some things in my portfolio. The last couple of years I've been selling off because best will in the world. Miles away, or maybe they weren't great. I did some sale and went back, so maybe it's fine when the tenant's there. When they move on, you need to refurb the whole thing. And sometimes
you'd have bought them cheap, weren't you?
I bought them very cheap, but sometimes not in the best areas. And I think it's, you know, a lesson for me is, it's all about due diligence. You've got to do your due diligence very, very carefully to make sure you're buying the right things. It's a local
business as well. I mean,
we
do have some properties. We have some. Rob and I have some of our portfolio in Wellingborough and Corby, and we sort of know the areas there, and it's been fine. But I tell you what, all the stuff we bought miles away has not been as good as buying here in Peterborough. All the streets we know, all the areas we know. When there's an issue or there's licensing or whatever, I know how to fix it because
you know the people who are involved.
And I learn all the stuff, all the local sort of regulations and all the, you know, and then I can talk to the local agents, talk to the local surveyor and everything, and I find a way through it all.
Yeah.
When you're miles away, if you're in 10 different areas, you've got to learn the rules in 10 different places.
Yeah, so I think I would always recommend if people are starting to invest, always look where you live.
Yeah.
Always start there.
It's
maybe
easier,
half an hour or so out from that.
Yeah.
Which is much easier. But then again, I think if you have a good network and reliable people, you can absolutely invest remotely. We've got some people who do training with us and they invest from overseas.
Yeah.
Do
they?
Yeah, because they set up a good power team. You know, and I think
then it's okay.
Yeah.
Rather than just buying new build flats in, I don't know, in London.
Oh, you don't want to do that. People have different criteria, don't they? Some just want to park money in the UK, and new build flats might work very well, but I think we agree that buying new build property is probably not the best thing to do. I like to buy something old, do it up, refinance, get all your money out.
Of course, you're absolutely right. It's for me, it's just such a simple equation. But the same happens in reverse. I talk about this a lot when you get them coming over from Singapore or China or whatever, and they all invest at Battersea Power Station, and they find now their flats are worth 40%, 50% less than what they signed up at. The same happens in reverse when you buy, not necessarily in the United Kingdom, but when you buy in other countries that you don't understand.
So we've probably both had that problem. I've had that problem, I'm sure you have in the past, when mid-2000s, when the market was booming and everywhere was on sale, I bought stuff in. I bought one in, I did really well in Spain. I bought one in Spain,
did you?
Held it for a few years, sold it, bought another. It was a holiday home, on the south coast.
Okay.
Bought it, sold it, reinvested up in Murcia.
Golf resort?
No, it was just next to a golf resort.
Okay.
With a developer, full of promises, everything went wrong, so I've still got that. I've been paying it off, I'm not using it, I'm just putting money into each month. I can afford to do that, but not ideal.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
And then I had one in Morocco as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
North Morocco.
Proper Wild West.
North Morocco, and it was like a third, it was just across from Port Banús. Across the Med, a third the price. The banks had just opened up. The king set up these new 5 cities.
Zones.
Exactly. 5-star hotels along the beaches, golf courses, professional football academies. Brilliant plan. And then the credit crunch scuppered it all. So I think it's half built still.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So but you know what? You got to take the rolls with the highs.
Of course you have.
And I think it's just a good lesson to everyone that, you know what? Investing close to where you live, probably in your own country, where you understand the language, you understand the law, you understand the finances and the tax. It's got to be the best thing to do. It's just
fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so fundamental.
But people get distracted. I know you did, about the bright lights and the thing. And it's just, when you're investing with money, you've got to be so careful with your money.
Yeah. And
boring is sometimes the best thing to do, isn't it?
The grass is always greener, Simon.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so you're back there and you were sort of buying no money down, I guess, over the years, but I guess you've done single lets, and then did you move into HMOs a little bit more?
Absolutely. So actually my first house I bought when I was 95, in 95, and I rented it out. It was just next to Birmingham University where I went to study, and I got a job at Cadbury's, and I rented the 2 rooms out to friends, partly because they didn't have flats in the area and I wanted to live in that area. And as a student, I was quite social, like to live with other people. And I realised that the rent they paid me covered the costs of my mortgage and my bills. And so I saved all my salary. And I had a part-time business running student nightclub events in Birmingham.
Oh, nice.
That was a really good fun cash business. And so I had this money in my business bank account. And in '98, I bought my second property. It was like 10 minutes closer to Cadbury's. My friends came and lived there, and my first house I rented out. So I became a student HMO landlord in '98.
And sort of accidental.
It was accidental, initially. Well, I thought I wanted to get into property, but I didn't know it was going to be an HMO. And you'll joke, talk about research. My first property, right? I was living in 61 Tamers Road, and I just got my job offer. I thought, right, I want to buy a house. And so I came out my front door, and looked down the road, looked up the road, there was a for sale sign. So I went back into my house to pick up my landline phone to call the estate agent, said I want to look at the house, arranged a viewing for the next day or so, walked around, thought this is amazing, it was so nice compared to my student house, which wasn't good at the time. I thought I'd have it. So that was all the research I did. Not probably very advisable.
Just cracked on.
But you know what? It was a great area because I lived there as a student, I knew there was massive demand, and the plan was eventually to get more.
And have you still got it?
I have, yeah. Still got it, yeah.
What did you get for it back then?
£48,500.
And now?
It's probably worth about $290 now.
Yeah, nice.
I had a shock the other day. My letting agent, because I don't manage it in mine, she called me up. She said, Simon, you've got a bit of a problem. I said, what's that? She said, you need to come out to the house. And I hardly ever go to my houses. I said, why? She said, they've demolished the house next door. Now, these are all terraced houses. They've just taken it down. No party wall agreement. And I think, what the hell's going on? And this builder had decided to
yank it down.
He's left the front wall, that's it.
Right.
Pulled down my chimney breast and everything.
What?
Digging a foundation, decided to build a wall on my boundary.
You'd had nothing, no party wall?
No, nothing at all. And he said, "Oh yeah, my architect signature." I said, "I don't think you have, and I think you need to stop straight away."
Yeah.
So we got a party wall surveyor in, and we've sorted it all out now. But there were some people.
What did the party wall surveyor say?
He said, "Well, they've had a breach in about 3 different ways.
They have.
Taking down the chimney, digging within 3 feet of your wall, going on the boundary wall." Loads of. They turned my garden into a dump for all the stuff.
Yeah.
Outrageous.
Sounds like a simple injunction to me.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah. But, these are things that happen, right?
Yeah.
But I can't complain. That house has doubled and a bit more.
Yeah.
It went up, it came down, it's gone up again.
Yeah.
It's made cash flow every single month. And that, for me, that's what property is all about.
Yeah.
You buy something, work once, get paid forever.
And how do you feel about, clearly when you bought it, I guess it was yielding, I don't know what the rent was, but it had been probably yielding in excess of double digits or into double digits. And over the years, I guess the yield has come down and down.
Yeah, as the value's gone up, absolutely. Yeah. And it's one of those properties where, so I think all investors, especially if you've been investing for a while, I think every year you should look at your portfolio. Yeah. And when you buy something, my favourite measure is return on investment. So you look, okay, how much...
ROCE.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So how much do you put in compared to how much it's generating for you? It's got to be the best measure.
That's all I'm bothered about.
Yields that AJ's talking about is pointless, I think. Yeah. Okay?
The yield is just a good way to compare one property with another.
Yeah. But it's not a true comparison because it doesn't take the cost into account. So it might be freehold or leasehold.
Yeah, but across the same type or style of property, you get a broad brush idea, with the gross
It's an initial indicator, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. But usually ROCE, how much have I left in versus what am I getting out every year, net, that is the primary
indicator. When you buy or when you refinance. However,
and of course over the years, as you're just about to say,
diminish. So I have a measure, and I don't know if I should coin this. I probably should, otherwise Rob will start teaching it. But I got something called return on capital, return on equity. Return on equity. So as the value goes up over time, right? If you sold that property, assuming it's a rental, you have to pay some capital gains tax. How much money would you get out?
Yes.
Right?
That's what
and compare that to the cash flow you're getting now.
Well, actually, that is what I calculate.
Right.
I calculate after all the costs, what am I going to get out and the capital gains tax versus the yearly income.
Yes.
And to me, that is ROCE. But
yes. Well, for me, ROCE, I do it when you first invest.
Okay,
ROCE or return on investment, another way of calling it.
Which is exactly when I initially do it.
Exactly. Yeah. But then what I'm saying is, as time goes on, you should look at all your portfolio. Yeah. And actually, I think if you own property in your own name, which I know has changed a bit with Section 24, most of us do own property in our own name, if we've got a reasonable amount. I think a strategy of at least selling at least one property a year and getting your capital gains allowance, your personal allowance, is probably a smart thing to do.
So use your 11,000.
And then reinvesting that money in a better cash flowing property. Yeah. So it's a case of look at the properties, which ones are coming to the end of mortgage terms, which ones don't you really want, which ones have got the lowest return for you, and reinvest it. Okay. So sometimes it's not about growing your when you get to a certain size, you don't want to make it bigger, just want to make it more profitable and more robust.
So grow the cash flow, grow the profit and the capital gain release. Or the ability to take money out.
And as long as you reinvest in another one, you're not then diminishing the amount of stock you hold.
Yes, indeed. But I suppose it depends where you live, doesn't it? I mean, if that one's gone up, then so have all the others in the area.
Exactly,
unless you reinvest in a sort of cheaper area.
I'd invest in a cheaper area that you also understand. So, I mean, that one in Selly Oak, I'm holding on to it because the kind of property, it will always rent. Yeah. It's kind of an emotional attachment. I'd have to pay so much capital gains tax on it as well.
That's the problem, isn't it?
So I think I might as well just hold on to that.
So, Section 24, you just touched on it. What are you doing about it for you?
So it's interesting. I think... So a lot of people, there are 1.75 million landlords in the UK apparently.
That's a lot. I didn't know there were that many.
Yeah. I think that's the national statistics. And I would say...
We're all ignored over tenants.
I would say...
There's only 2 or 3 million tenants, aren't there?
Well, no, it's probably quite a few more than that. I think it's 20% of the sectors.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And how many dwellings? There's...
It's about 70
million people, 30
million dwellings.
I think it's probably 2.5 people per dwelling, so it's about 30 million.
Yeah, and I think it's probably at least 20% of the sector.
6 million.
So I think it's probably 6 million tenants.
6 million tenants against 1.75 of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why they keep winning. Yeah.
So which maybe you can understand that.
Yeah.
But Section 24 is actually a very clever piece of legislation. I completely disagree with it, but it's very clever the way they've done it because, if you're a higher rate taxpayer, which most property investors are, and if you own property in your own name, you're going to get clobbered basically. And I don't know about you, but I've spoken to a number of property specialist accountants, and you always need to make sure they're property specialists because most accountants just don't understand property tax.
Yeah.
And I find they all disagree on what should be done.
I agree with you. Yeah.
So it's very clear. So, I say to people, go and speak to a number of people, listen to what they say, and whoever you resonate with the most, that's probably the person to go with.
Yeah.
So I've chosen a particular route. I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's it's very confusing, isn't it?
It's a bit of a grey area. I'll tell you what one way to sort of control the risk, because I agree with you. I can't remember how many accountants I've spoken to, but there are at least an absolute minimum of the accountants I've been speaking to, 3 different ways that they say you
and they all disagree with the other ways, don't they?
Often, and they either say that HMRC will come down on you or whatever. One way to deal with it is to apply for clearance and tell HMRC what you're about to do and see if they will basically agree with you, give you clearance to say that you're not going to pay capital gains tax or stamp duty.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I mean, the under the Ramsey case, a lot of people are going to LLP, then into limited company.
Seen that.
Claiming that, and I think that seems quite good because you can avoid the stamp duty and also you mitigate the capital gains tax. It resets it to 0, which is pretty powerful. But you have to do it in the right way. You have to be able to prove that you are managing your properties and it's the same business. So like all these things, there are caveats. And so I think you've got to get personalised advice to make sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Get the accountant to put his balls on the line and write.
And it's not just the accountant. See, you can try and get it approved by HMRC, but they are very reluctant to sometimes.
My understanding is that they're not issuing clearances now.
No, that's what I mean.
Corporations.
They don't want to do it.
We managed to get ours. We got clearance with stamp duty and CGT.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was probably 3 years ago, something like that. I obviously haven't tried since, but a couple of people said they're not issuing clearances now.
No, I don't think they are.
No.
So it's very hard to get them to commit.
Yeah. Same old.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So fast forward to now.
But by the way, that's a real opportunity, Section 24.
Yeah.
Because it's bad news for all of us.
Yeah.
But we are seeing, I don't know about your network meetings, but at ours, we are seeing so many long-term landlords who may not have come to our meetings before, coming forward, and they're really thinking, a number of them, about retiring early and saying, you know what, I'm going to just sell up. Have a load of money, sit on a beach. And actually, I think that means, if you look at Article 4 areas where you can't really get new HMOs because the council doesn't want them without getting planning permission, it's very difficult to do that. Some Article 4 areas will be opening up because some of those landlords will be starting to sell some of those properties. Now, the challenge is sometimes they're over-optimistic about the value of them. But I think, depending on what might happen to the market, and if they're not selling at that higher price, over time, I think they'll adjust their views. So I think there's an opportunity to get into some of those areas that some people might have missed out on.
Yeah.
And also, one of my favourite strategies is purchase lease options. And we can use those to take on a portfolio, have a schedule of when we buy them over a number of years. The landlord can go and sit on the beach and retire, and actually they can maximise their capital gains allowance each year. And so that particular strategy works incredibly well in this market. So I think whenever there's bad news, if you have the right attitude, there's always some optimistic news around it. Yeah. There's always an angle.
I mean, we've been talking here quite a bit about the latest numbers that are out in terms of rents going up. And, as a consequence of landlords selling and less landlords buying.
Yes.
Obviously it's Section 24, but it's also stamp duty, and it's also them saying they're going to abolish the Section 21, and the tenant fee ban. And all this has created this media noise and general negativity towards buy-to-let. And we've seen it here. I mean, rents have gone, when I started, a 3-bed in 2005 would have been 450. And then if you fast forward to maybe, I don't know, 2000 and even 2012, 2013, maybe we're getting 550. And it didn't move, it moved 100 quid in all those years. if you then
But it's
fast
in a real
forward
jump
to,
recently.
200 quid. I mean,
It's crazy, isn't
they're
it?
750 now.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's off the back of this.
And you're right, because obviously less people out there renting properties,
Yeah.
less supply, higher demand, higher prices.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, different political parties talk about different things they're going to do, and I think they've got to be very careful. If too many private landlords leave the sector,
As they are doing.
and if it gets worse, and they are definitely doing it, more than normal. In any cycle, you have people coming in, people leaving, but more than normal right now.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to have a real problem, because if there's not enough housing, what do the local councils do?
They're
They're going to have a real issue.
Well, they come to us and they start saying we'll do a long lease on, a rump of properties, which is what they've been trying to do around here. I think the sort of bed and breakfast, travel lodge thing has got a lot of bad press. So the council are trying to do their own deals here, but I'm not sure it's working that well. So it's interesting how loads of landlords are leaving. Obviously, this means that there is an opportunity. We're seeing quite a few big portfolios coming up of landlords, which are owned by landlords who are exiting probably because they don't really know what to do about Section 24. And they're in a bit of a bind because the tax bill has already gone up quite a bit. But new landlords are buying in, putting them in a limited company, getting around it, and sort of reinvigorating the market. We've got one of our trainers is buying about 60 properties at the moment that way, and I've spoken to another one who's negotiating on a series of portfolios like that. So I think there's
lots of portfolios coming up. So again, if you know what you're doing, great opportunity. Isn't it interesting when there's negativity in the news and the press? Think back to 2009.
It was the best. The
best time, man. How many people looking back
I did
would buy a lot more property then if they could? Knowing what they know now, and it's going to be the same. I think now is an opportunity of the decade.
Yeah, I mean, 09, 10, 11, we were buying houses in Wellingborough and Corby at 50 grand, 55 grand. They're worth 110, 120 now.
Crazy.
And Peterborough is, 75, and they're all 145 now. It's the best time, and whenever people are moving that way, you've got to go the other way. You need to be contrarian in your investment style. And I really believe that. If the papers are telling you one thing, usually the opposite is true.
Exactly.
So, fast forward to now. You just talked a little bit about purchase options.
Yes, purchase options.
Yeah. So that's a sort of favourite. What other strategies and stuff are you doing now?
Well, I love HMOs still, and I think HMOs sometimes get a bit of bad press because I think in many cities there is an oversupply of HMOs, but actually they're very average standard HMOs, and if you make yours slightly better than the competitors, you should have no problem renting them out. And actually, I think HMOs is a recession-proof strategy, because if times get hard and people have to tighten their belts, so they can't afford to live on their own in a studio or an apartment, they have to pay their bills as well. Actually, HMOs are far more cost-effective. So I think in the right location, always with property, a good HMO should always rent out.
Well, you're preaching to the converted, Simon. That's probably my favourite strategy. Although I put them into, they're a bit like student flats. And then I put professionals in. So they've 6 rooms with a kitchen, lounge, diner. All the rooms are ensuited. And then I put a series of those into a block. And I take big buildings and convert them into those.
I'd like to ask your view on this, because I've done a number of care home conversions to single flats, and we've generally sold those, and that's a real pain to do that. I don't want to do any more of that. I want to do buy to hold, basically, or build to rent.
I don't like selling stuff.
I don't like selling stuff, really. No, it's pain, real pain.
You just pay a load of tax.
So, exactly.
Why would you do that?
So I'm looking more for commercial to residential, but not flats, purpose-built HMOs. And let's say you've got a building, and there's a mixed view on this, because this co-living trend is becoming very popular. So you could buy somewhere and make it a large 18-bed co-living, which is quite cool and trendy. Or do you do 3 6-beds? And my personal view is I'd rather do 3 6-beds, because they're almost like separate units, and you could hive them off and sell them, refinance, whatever you want to do. That's my view. What's your view on that?
3 6-bed cluster flats.
Yes, rather than a big 18-bed. Because I think you've got to be students love those kind of things. I'm not sure so many young professionals do, although there is a move towards this co-living. So what's your view on that?
So I have never done any unit bigger than 8.
Right, okay.
I've done series of flats within a building, because and of course, I'm probably not the best person to speak to about it because I don't have an 18 or 20 bed one.
Yeah.
I've got 40 rooms in a building, but they're all split into sixes.
Yes.
Yeah. And
so the question is, would you consider doing a really big one and putting like a cool cafe at the bottom?
Do you know what? There's one just going through. It's just been consented in Peterborough. It's about 50 rooms.
Yeah.
If you go, obviously, I've been to the one in Willesden, the 500 room one, and I love the model. I think it's great. I'd probably run a test. To be honest, every time I look at the model though. When I take all those communal areas out, I get a lot more rooms in. And if I split them down into sixes, I just feel like people would probably prefer to live with 5 other people rather than be in a hostel.
Yeah, I think that's my view as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Willesden one, they are separated. They've got their own kitchenettes and whatever, so that's a bit different. I've seen, sort of 18, 20 bed HMOs, not co-living with all the sort of whiz-bang communal areas, but they tend to feel a bit like a hostel, a bit like a rat run, whatever. That's the first thing. The next thing is the legislation. Clearly, councils, and here they've obviously consented one, so they are getting more used to it. So you've probably
but it's very new though, isn't it? Really?
It is, but I wasn't sure they were going to accept it around here. But look, there's a precedent. I love doing the sixes because you can usually. If you've got a 2-bed flat, you can convert them up to 6 without planning consent, which is lovely. Licensing, becomes a lot easier. Usually, because you haven't got to go and get planning consent, you haven't got issues with parking, you haven't got issues with neighbours knowing that you're putting a load of... There's all this stuff that comes off the back of it.
Yeah.
And if I do a 10 or 11 metre squared room, with an ensuite, I just get a lot less hassle from the authority. So that's why I like it. And B, I'm concerned about loads living in a big building together, because if they're living in a cluster flat and there's only 6 of them, I think people like that. They prefer that sort of living.
So we agreed HMOs, great strategy. Yeah. Put that together with the PLOs, you've got a perfect strategy.
Yeah, well, purchase
option,
lease option. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, we've done a few of those, as long as I can end up owning the freehold, which is obviously you've got your option to purchase there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. Yeah. If I'm just leasing, it's just not for me.
No.
But to get going, early doors, if you're sort of cash constrained, it's great.
A rent to rent on an HMO is a great way. And it works really well in expensive places as well. Lots of landlords got very low mortgages. They just don't want the hassle. If you can come in, you've got to be good at filling the rooms.
Yeah.
But that can work really well. What's your view on serviced accommodation?
Well, I mean, serviced accommodation is obviously very area and sort of property specific.
Yeah.
So I think if you want to have a very profitable business, but it really is more towards the business rather than sort of...
and the word service kind of gives it away.
Absolutely.
You've got to make sure the service is right.
Absolutely. Rather than a sort of hands-free investment.
Yes.
Fine. So... you're going to be managing, sort of cleaner, linen, all the service type element, letting people in. As long as you're happy to be running a business and spending your time doing that, I think you can have a very profitable model. And we have quite a few trainers and loads of our delegates who do that. I don't have the time to do that. Obviously, we have a letting agency that manage all of our units. We have some serviced units, Rob and I, in the local area. I reckon quite a few of our delegates do better than we do in terms of their monthly profit, probably because of the areas and because they are involved on the ground doing it every day.
It's certainly not passive.
And they get paid to do it. It's not passive.
Yeah.
But a great model, and certainly great for those people who, maybe they're in a job, they want to leave their job, they want to replace an income, they don't mind giving their time because it's still only... I don't know, the equivalent of a day a week or whatever, and they're going to be replacing the income from the job.
My concern is about legislation, because it is the Wild West at the moment, and I'm just concerned about people doing everything in serviced accommodation and then something coming out that might wipe out their business. Well, because HMOs are so highly regulated, you're not going to get anything drastic with those. But I worry about serviced accommodation because of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, do you know what? With any of these styles and investment, sort of techniques, I've learned now that I go reasonably deep.
Yeah.
and then I switch. I keep all the old stuff,
Yeah.
but then I switch along to something else.
Yeah.
And it is because of that. Because I used to people would be saying to me all the time, "Oh, the government might do something, whatever." And most of the time, it just never happened. But we've seen so much stuff over the last few years that it has made me more wary. So, for instance, with the single lets and the HMOs, Section 24 affects those, but doesn't affect serviced accommodation.
No, that's right.
So, in many ways, there's a benefit there. Planning, well, I suspect that that is a little bit grey because
it's very grey, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there was an appeal. There was an appeal that was refused not that long ago on, I think someone was running a serviced flat and the inspector decided that actually it probably was C1 or there was a material change of use which had occurred away from C3. Now, that's not a final decision and clearly there are, and when you look at London, why do they need legislation to require you to have planning consent if you're letting it for more than 3 months? It seems perverse.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a little bit grey, but most areas there's no issue. I mean, there's certainly not an issue here. And clearly you're paying business rates instead of council tax. And, we've got quite a few HMOs and, they're en-suited. We haven't got a single banding around here for council tax.
No, that's happening in quite a few places. But
it is, which is a risk.
It is a risk.
But not a risk to serviced accommodation.
No.
So I think you're absolutely right. I think something will happen with that. And they'll either say, right, you need planning consent, or they'll say, it's subject to Section 24 or X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's going to be. You don't know when it's going to be. But I just think you should do that along with the other strategies. And
so don't put all your eggs in one basket, basically. Yeah.
Absolutely
And I think financing, because the finance world has not caught up with serviced accommodation. The few lenders have come out, they've kind of withdrawn. So a lot of people are technically breaching their mortgage conditions, which is not illegal, but there could be issues there. So I think it's just something to be careful.
Yeah.
A lot of my students are doing very well with it, but I'm not the biggest fan of it for that reason.
Have you had single banding issues where you are?
I personally haven't had them, but the biggest problem is where you have a council and they're doing it ad hoc. So I know several people who've got 2 properties on the same road, one single banded, one isn't.
Well,
and that's the real danger.
Well, that's because the VOA have got onto one and not the other. The key to that is, for many years, I did big HMOs, but I only ever did 2-storey ones, so they didn't need licensing. My attitude was to keep the council away.
175,000 more properties need licensing now because of the changes.
And it worked for many years. I've made sure they're all compliant, did all the fire, I used to get a fire guy in, specialist, the whole lot.
Yeah.
But my attitude was if the council don't come in, VOA aren't coming in, who's going to know?
Yeah.
Clearly now, all of ours have been, and the council have been in licensing them all, and they've made some changes. Some rooms we've got to have, we've had to make them bigger and all that sort of stuff, which has impacted us to some extent. But no issue with that. But it doesn't take a lot, does it, for the VOA to go on the council
what
system
we do,
and work out
we
where
put
they
in
are.
our contracts that the landlord pays the council tax. As long as it's one single banded, and we put if the council decide to do single banding, that would then be the liability of the tenants.
Which I think it is anyway.
It is. Yes, it is. But we want to put it in the contract
to make it clear,
so that it's clear for the tenants, and they don't kick off and complain because tenants don't understand these things, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's about being transparent.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any defence, against it?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so.
No. I mean, it's all about herediment.
It's got to be paid.
I mean, there's a few things online, a few people saying, oh, this works, that works, but I haven't really found a substantive defence.
No, I don't think so.
And even, taking out en suites, if you've converted a building,
apparently
that still doesn't work.
If it's a locked room, it can be assessed as people think it has to have an en suite.
No.
People say it has to be en suite and has a kitchen. That's not correct.
No.
Just a room that's locked can be a single dwelling.
That's my understanding. Yeah. It's on the VOA website. They've put some examples.
I was at I went to a property show. I was speaking quite a few, and there was a VO stand, and I went up and I asked the lady, and she said, "Oh, I don't know about that."
Well,
and you think,
they don't know stuff.
Computer says no, right?
But therein lies, in some ways, the opportunity and the good defence because. most of the time they come in, as long as you keep your mouth shut, they're not looking at that. They're looking at that.
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly. And then they're gone.
We call it misdirection in magic.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Look over here while you're supposed to be looking here.
That's what you. That's where you come from, is it?
Yeah. Well, actually, so I very short.
Yeah.
I got a magic trick when I was 7. Paul Daniels' magic trick.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
And I started to get into the hobby and I bought more tricks and I actually became quite good. And I went to a magic shop in London called Davenport's, and they started a young magicians club. So I'd go on every Saturday morning, have a professional magician who would teach us a trick, and the young magicians that will learn. And we do a Christmas show each year. And actually, looking back now, that was actually my first mastermind group because I'd learned from the peers there.
Of course, yeah.
And I started doing kids shows, and I learned about the value of specialist knowledge because my friends were starting to work at 15, 16 on a Saturday job in a local newsagent or something, and they might earn 15 quid for the day. This is mid-90s, right?
Yes, yeah.
I'd do a magic show for 40 minutes in the afternoon, get paid 20, 25 quid. So much higher, and just show specialist knowledge means you can earn more money. That's what I do too. And then so I did a little bit. I didn't do much at university because it was all word of mouth recommendation. I joined the magic circle just to keep my hand in. And then I got a little badge, and the secret handshake, exactly. Yeah. And so I call my book Property Magic because the analogy is that property, if you don't know how it works, it can seem all mysterious and you don't know, but when you know the secret, just like a magic trick, it's actually very straightforward. Yeah. It's not easy, but it's straightforward. Yeah. Just like property and magic, that's the book. That's what it's all about. That's where it came from.
Interesting, very interesting. So where in terms of the future now, where do you think we're headed? Clearly, the market's got a bit sort of dampened, probably because of Brexit uncertainty and all that stuff.
And Section 24 as well.
Yeah, where do you think we're going year, 3, 5 years out?
So I think, generally the market's done very, very well for the last 10 years. Since 2009, as you said, a lot of your properties have more than doubled in value. And I think that when you have a boom, you're going to have a little correction. I personally don't think we're going to see the same kind of crash as we had in 2008, 2009, because that was all credit crunch and there was irresponsible lending. The banks are much smarter now, really controlling the lending. So different circumstances. But I think seeing a dip probably is going to happen as more and more landlords want to sell their properties. Uncertainty, amateurs not knowing if they should go in or not because of all these things going on.
I think it's worse than Brexit.
Brexit,
if it happened,
country will kind of settle down. People will always want to trade with the UK. And I think in terms from a property point of view, I think we've seen many foreign workers already leave the country. Certainly some of my clients have reported that's their kind of tenant profile, that some of them have left.
Lots of ours have.
And I think the ones that want to leave have probably gone. And I think government said they don't want to lose. And frankly, the UK needs some of these skilled workers because there's not enough in the UK to do some of the jobs that they do for the rates they do, right?
Well, our build costs have gone up 20-30% since all this started. Clearly, some of that is materials because sterling's depreciated.
Because there's a shortage as well of materials.
Yeah, because sterling's depreciated. But the biggest thing is because there's less labour rates have gone up. Probably 20% over the last 3 years, which is a major issue for construction and when we're converting buildings.
It's a big challenge we've seen as well.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of the population, if they flood the tunnel and pull up the drawbridge and no one else ever comes to the UK, we'll still have a growing population because of increasing birth rates and longer life expectancy. Long-term population goes up. We don't have enough accommodation. Long-term property prices should continue to go up. Yeah,
well, I agree with you. And clearly, I'd be doing something else if I didn't.
Exactly.
I can't see how property over the long term won't continue to go up.
It will fluctuate as properties do.
Always. I just work. I had it this morning. Someone emailed me saying, I've heard that you shouldn't buy your own home and you should use the money for investment. Buying your own home is a bad idea. I said, well, just think about this. If over the long term, let's say property's gone up, 8% a year or whatever, but let's just say it's 5. Let's say on average it goes up 5%, not every year, but over the long term, average of 5%. If you borrow a good chunk of the purchase price, let's say you borrow 90%, not everyone will want to do that, but let's say you borrow 90%, you're paying 2% interest on that loan.
Yeah.
You then have some maintenance, and you'll have some insurance and whatever else. So let's say the total cost of running that house is 3.5% of the purchase price.
Yeah.
And it goes up 5% a year.
Yeah.
So let's say you just throw that 1.5% differential in the bin. The thing's free, is it not? And you're getting to live in a home, and there's no capital gains tax when you sell it.
Yeah.
So, I think you should buy your own home, and I think the main reason is because clearly there is still a housing shortage. There will continue to be a housing shortage. We've this year built, I don't know, we built 120,000. We still need.
Is it 300? I think it's 300 they say they want to get to eventually. I don't know how they're going to get there.
The Barker report was about 200 and something, and then there's, I think the report you're on about is the last couple of years.
Yeah, 300 they say.
Yeah, but I still don't think we're anywhere near that.
No.
So it continues.
And that's one of the things we're trying to help with crowd property. You help that shortage and help more developers borrow to fund it.
To create more housing stock.
Yeah, absolutely.
Simon, thank you.
Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for inviting me on.
You're very welcome. And I hope you guys have got some good insights. Simon, how can people find more out about you?
So LinkedIn is a very good way to connect with me.
Yeah.
You can follow me on Instagram, on YouTube. Just search for Simon Zutshi. That's Zutshi. And probably the best thing is just go and check out Property Magic. We keep on updating. It's 6th edition at the moment. There's an audio version on Audible. Get it on Amazon, Kindle, etc. And obviously come along to a Property Investor Network meeting, pinmeeting.co.uk. And how about you, Mark, for people who don't know you on my podcast?
I'm www.progressiveproperty.co.uk. Same, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
I don't even use Twitter anymore. Do you use Twitter still?
I don't use a lot of them, mate.
No.
I get told what to put on.
Someone else does it for you.
I'm more interested in property. Thank you very much, Simon.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking me, and thanks for coming on my podcast as well. This double swap was a great idea.
Indeed. That has been Mark Homer for Mark My Words.
And Simon Zutshi for the Property Magic podcast.